New year, new season. Today we are kicking off a new season of Tech Talk, the one on cloud. Over the next few episodes, our aim is to explore this topic from multiple perspectives. In that context, our first episode provides an overview of cloud technologies today and the relevant regulations that apply to it at EU level. We also discuss cloud sovereignty and governance. PwC's own Xiaoyi Fang, Regulatory and Compliance Manager, and Quentin Bechoux, Cloud Transformation Manager, share their views on key challenges and opportunities of cloud adoption. So let's hear it from them. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Talk. This is episode 1 of season 7, which is about the cloud. And this episode is called the one on cloud sovereignty and governance, actually. Hi, Armin. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you again, Carla. I missed you in the last episode.
Me too. I miss you too, but it was for a good reason. I had a nice holiday.
Yeah, sunny
Yes.
Portugal.
Sunny
I'm a bit
Portugal.
jealous.
And that's why I'm a bit rusty today, but let's see how it goes.
We'll get you up to speed because the topic is very exciting.
Exactly, that's true. So welcome to our guests, Quentin and Xiaoyi. I will ask the first question to Xiaoyi. What are the existing regulatory framework in Luxembourg?
So the existing one, when it comes to cloud outsourcing, for the entities which are supervised by our regulator, so CSSF, they need to now look at it, the circular CSSF 22/806, so the outsourcing circular. And for insurance companies, they're also having, CAA also publish a dedicated circular letter when it comes to cloud outsourcing topics as well. Maybe for those who already know, in the past we have rather complex regulatory framework because we have a different circulars depending on the topic. So when it comes to cloud outsourcing, we have a dedicated one, but we're also having other circular, which is depending on the type of in-scope entities, the supervised entities. So it was rather complex. Today, if internally you have any cloud project, so cloud initiatives, the first step I would recommend to look at it is really look at this circular 22/806. It doesn't mean that it will directly fall in the scope of the circular, but at least as one of the requirements, they need to also assess first of all from the regulatory perspective if the project or arrangement will also need to comply with the circular or not. So this will be the first step, I would say.
Cool. And could you give us a brief overview of the Cloud Act? What is it and what do we need to know?
Yeah, sure. The Cloud Act is a US government law that was done under the Trump presidency, so back in 2018. And basically, this law allows you to, allows the US government to request some data from the user. But the request can also go outside of the US, and this is the issue. So even if it's hosted here in the European Union, then the government could maybe have to request this data. You can also compare this law to the GDPR. We are subject to the GDPR. If our data is in the US, they should also apply the GDPR to us. You have also several other laws in the world, like in China, India, Australia, that also apply worldwide. So this is really an issue when you are speaking of data in the cloud, because even if your data is located really elsewhere in the world, some legislation could apply to it. Then in our case, the main issue that we have here in Luxembourg is that the two main cloud providers that we are using here in the market are AWS and Microsoft. So they are really American company. So they have region of the data center that are all hosted in the EU. But then are we subject to this Cloud Act? It's really a big question right now. Recently, the Dutch government requested a law firm to really analyze this law. And the main result of this is that yes, they could request the data, but even if this is not an American company, but if this company was using software or hardware that are coming from the USA, then it could be subject to the Cloud Act. So the big question that this is raising is how to protect your data if you want to move to the cloud, public cloud, or a SaaS software like you have on the market, like Zoom or Salesforce or Workday and many others. How will you protect your data from this Cloud Act? And currently, the only answer that I have is just to encrypt your data. So at rest or in transit, but whenever you can, just try to encrypt it and own your key. Because if you are creating your encryption key using a cloud services, they will own your key. So they could possibly decrypt your data. So you really need to get your key on premise, having all the management to ensure that all the sensitive data that you have are encrypted using the cloud. Or just do not use the cloud for the sensitive data that you don't want any leak on it.
Yeah, but this Cloud Act must have caused a lot of tension between the EU and the US.
Yeah, that's sure. But like the GDPR came in enforcement in Europe, and it had some impact in the US, and they had to also comply with that. And the data retention that was in the law here in Europe, that apply also to US company, and they had to comply. So I don't know where is really the limit of this digital law in a cloud world.
Well, but you gave wise advice, I would say.
I hope so.
So based on your experience, what are the regulatory aspects that the in-scope entities struggle the most?
Well, it really depends on also I would say, business model of the entities, and also the maturity. Rather the regulatory maturity, but also maturity, for instance, when in terms of setup, because we're also having some companies who just newly join also the market as well. I think based on our observations on the previous engagement, the regulator aspects, I would say, first of all, is really to know what are the operational activities, the process that has been undertaken by another entity or falling the scope or not in the circular, so scope of outsourcing arrangements. This is, I think, the first challenge. We can observe this, struggle also from even more mature entities. The second one, really, the distinguishment is critical, not because a lot of entities are only focusing on the impact on the core activities, so business activities. But again, in the circular, listed more order criteria that for an entity to consider when they assess any arrangements falling the scope. Another one, I would say, maybe the documentation of exit strategy and plan. This is because sometimes they may not know what could be the alternative solutions, and order simply doesn't know a little bit, to what extent they also need to detail such document.
Actually, I have an out-of-the-blue question, if that's okay, because I know you provide training as well on this subject. So what do you usually focus on, and also what do you sense are the struggles? Why do people, and in this case companies, come to you for this training usually?
I think the main reason is the cloud initiative or cloud project. Usually it's from the IT department at the first place. And for some reason, they can be either an initiative from the group or locally. Team member from the IT, maybe they are not fully aware of all the regulations are going on. So that's why in our training, we all the time emphasize these collaborations between the outsourcing project owner but also the different subject matter experts. For instance, typically in the cloud outsourcing project, you certainly have this regulatory layer, but you also have data, because you will also sometimes talking about data processing, data storage. So we all the time also emphasize our client to include the DPO from the company from the very beginning, not only at the stage of drafting the notification, because we have a dedicated question for that. At the very beginning of the project, even they haven't really signed the contract with the service provider to make sure that all the data it's really clear, what are the data we process, stored, but also the compliance of your service provider in terms of GDPR, or not only, but also other, for instance, ICT security measures that are put in place, the standard, etc. So the reason I think it can be various, because we also have a quite different audience, right?
Yeah, and I think that on top of that, a lot of companies are just embracing the cloud journey here in Luxembourg because of this highly regulated country. And so we have people joining us in the training to really understand the fundamentals of the cloud. So what I'm giving them is really what they should know before moving to the cloud. So it's the basic, how to set up the compliance, the governance, the connectivity. So really all the fundamentals of the cloud that they need to understand to be able to take some decision and to really create this cloud strategy.
And is it usually the case? So when they come to you, they are just about to start, or some are already in the process?
No, some are already in the process, and we can also see that some are already using cloud and without noticing it. So because of the COVID, I think we all use video conference tool, and they are maybe mainly all based on the cloud. So starting on the training, I'm always asking, what cloud provider are you using? Most of the time it's Microsoft Office 365, but they are never thinking of the voice conferencing tool or some other SaaS software, like I said in the beginning of the recording, Workday, Salesforce, and things like that.
Okay. And could you explain the distinction or the difference between the exit strategy and the plan?
So the exit strategy is really a documentation of you summarizing a little bit what you're going to do once you decided or not to cooperating with your service provider anymore. So it's really like what are the different options that you can consider. Either you retake the services in-house, or go for another service provider. It can be, the most common options. The exit plan, this is really the document that our clients struggle a little bit to say that, but it's never, it will happen only in the future. How I'm going to know what should be done, etc. What we usually recommend is really a plan. Of course, it's a more detailed and a strategy documentation. And because strategy is a direction idea, the plan is really to allows you to know what you need to do in terms of resources, in terms of steps, in terms of also of cost, budget, etc. So I think what they really can leverage on is the current, for instance, if they are a current migration plan. Because if they have already go through once from in-house to another service provider, they know more or less, the key steps they need to take. For the different resources that they have been also work on in the past for the type of project. So the plan, again, is more like a project management plan with the detailed steps, how you're going to move from the one service provider to another or in-house. This is, I think, the big difference between the exit strategy and plan.
And how long do the plans usually last for? Is it something 1 to 3 years, or does it go beyond? What is the timeline of the plan?
I think it depends on the scope of your project, of course, because the complexity and the size of your company and the function, IT operations and activity that you would like to also outsource as well. And it really depends on that, because if you, for instance, you will be different if you just want to move like 10 applications rather than 50 or 100 maybe. And also if you would like also use, for instance, the data center of your, so it really depends on the scope of the project, I would say.
Okay.
So, what are the key elements of a cloud exit strategy?
This is a good question. So I think it's you have to undertake several steps on it. The first one would be really to analyze and plan. So analyze what you have, what you want to do. So if you are moving from on-premise to a cloud provider, and how to really plan it. So it can also be the reverse. So your software is already on the cloud, and your exit strategy will be to move back from the cloud to on-premise. You could have several reasons on that, sensitive data, or the cloud provider is not respecting the contract on the location of the data because they change anything. So it's the first step. So you also need to take on the second step the risk assessment. What will be the risk of moving to this software vendor or moving back on premise, maybe losing some features, things like that. Then you need to get this strategy validated with the top management of your company. I think it's also really the key point. Then I would go to the migration plan. And this has to be really planned carefully. Once done, you really need to test it. So take maybe a piece of the migration, do a proof of concept, move it back on premise or move it to the cloud to really test that everything is working fine for you. Because in case of disaster, you will need to apply also this plan. So don't think that it's only a paper plan. You really need to test it. The last point is a periodic review. And to update this strategy, because we can see that with the cloud provider, they are really innovative company. They are updating the software and the features on a maybe for some of them daily basis. So you really need to keep up the pace. And if you have some features that are available right now when you are doing your plan, they might be not in the future, but you could also have some other new feature that you could use that could facilitate your exit strategy. So it's really the last step. So ensure that you have this periodic review and periodic then test of your procedure. Then if we are speaking about the cloud, so you already have a workload in the public cloud and you need an exit strategy on that. We have a lot of questions from the client because Office 365, so the email system from Microsoft, it's really heavily used here by companies in Luxembourg, and they are the market leader on it, and there are no really good competitor on that. Even if you move back your email services from Microsoft to on-premise using the Microsoft tools, you will lose some feature. So having a proper exit strategy with Office 365, it's something that is really hard to manage. Mm-hmm. On the other side, if you are using public cloud for a software that is deployed, internal software that you develop, you really need to think of how you will deploy it on the cloud. Because if you are using IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, so IaaS, infrastructure as a code, so basically you could do a lift and shift of your workload to the cloud using virtual machine. So this will be really easy to move back on premise. But you will not benefit of the innovation of the cloud and the managed services. If you are using managed services that are specific to a cloud provider, then you will have specific feature that you will not have access on premise or even not with another cloud provider. So it will be a kind of vendor locking, but you need to think about it before moving your application to the cloud. So when you are also thinking about your exit strategy at that point. So this could be my advice on this point. Then the last thing that I have in mind is the multi-cloud. So if your company has a cloud strategy, maybe you should think about the multi-cloud from the beginning, Because if you have an application that you can deploy from the beginning on two main cloud provider, if you want to exit one or the other, it will already be in place. It will just be a switch, and it will be a really straightforward process.
Between the three approaches that you mentioned, what would be the benefit of SaaS approach? Because this seems to be the approach that people talk about a lot, or at least that we heard on the podcast before. So from your perspective, and for the Luxembourg companies, would this be the right approach, or what are the pros and cons of that?
Okay, the pros is really that you will give the responsibility to the provider to manage your application. So if I take the example again of Office 365, you don't need to manage all the server at the back. Microsoft is doing it for you. They are releasing new features every month, and everything is working. They are ensuring the SLA, etc. So it's really less hassle for your company. You don't need the skills anymore to maintain Exchange, etc. And this is true for many the SaaS provider. But for the company providing SaaS software, they have all the knowledge on their side, and so they can also easily update the software and release new features because they have the ownership of everything. So they are also ensuring that all the clients are using the update version of the software. So this is really the pro. On the cons, I think it's the vendor lock-in, because when you are on a cloud SaaS software with specific features, it will be really hard to find the same kind of software that you will be able to install on-premise in your data center with the same features, and you will also lack the skills to do it.
So you get to benefit from the innovation that cloud offers and kind of peace of mind.
Yes.
But then the risk is really regarding the exit strategy, because if you get so locked into this one specific provider, then it will be really difficult to walk away.
That's correct. And with the main provider, you will have an idea where your data is located. This is for sure. But if you are using a more niche player, smaller player on the market, sometimes it's more difficult to know where your data is really located.
Right. And if maybe the backup is located in the same place as we've seen in the past. Okay, cool.
Well, I don't have any other question from my side. What about you, Armin?
I wanted to ask one last question.
Go
what
ahead.
would be one key takeaway that you want our audience to have from this episode?
At least for my part, so the regulatory aspect should be also taken in consideration at the very beginning of your cloud journey. And also, please don't forget, involve your different subject matter experts. So as I mentioned, the DPO, the compliance, the legal people, also at the very beginning of your journey.
Yeah, and I would add that by experience with the client here in Luxembourg, we see that we need the support from the top management of the company to move to the cloud. When we have the support at the top, it's really pushing, and the project is going well and fast. But if we are maybe lacking this top management validation of the cloud, then sometimes projects are failing or a bit slow, and we do not get the validation when we need it for some specific design and infrastructure.
Right, so top management buy-in.
Yes.
Then collaboration across the organization to really understand the implications of the cloud regarding the compliance, legal, IT, and so on.
And don't underestimate the resource that you need to move to the cloud. It will take some internal resources. Train your people to get the right skills.
But it's worth it.
Yes.
It's worth it.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed as well the experience.
Yeah, that was the first time for me, but it was really good.
Great, and I hope to see you again.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
you.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day. Bye.
Thank you.
And that's all for today. This is Tech Talk, technology made simple over a cup of coffee. Don't miss out on any future episodes by hitting subscribe. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode.